Hello again, YouTube. We got another episode of the Last of Us HBO show to review, but before we get into that, I do want to share some tragic, sad news that the voice actor for the Last of Us video game, who played Tess, Annie Wertsching, I believe is how you say her name, sadly passed away at the age of 45 from cancer. So, rest in peace to her. Very sad to hear about that, especially to die at a young age, but she gave us an amazing performance in the first game. But on to some more positive news. Episode 3, I think, was done very well again. Very surprising. Went a different direction where I wasn't expecting it, and I never watched the previews of coming up next because I want to go to the show as blind as possible, even though I have played the games, including the second game, and I have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen in the show. But with today's episode, no clue. So it starts off very well with Joel and Ellie traveling and finding supplies and other little areas that Joel has stashed things en route to get to Bill and Frank's. Then we get a kind of iconic scene from the game, a little bit different. So Ellie goes up to a little arcade machine that's Mortal Kombat 2 and talks about Milena, I think is her name, and makes this little comment about, oh man, I had a friend who knew all about this game, and there was this girl named Melina, who wears a mask, and she would take it off and then eat you and spit out your bones. In the game, I believe, what's supposed to be kind of based on Mortal Kombat, they call it the Turning, if I remember correctly, and the character's name is Angel Knives. And there was something about, like, she punches a hole through your chest before doing a roundhouse kick and kicks your head off. So a little bit difference there. I understand why they changed it, because they want to connect with a more broad audience who might have played Mortal Kombat, since The Turning's a fictional video game that's just in The Last of Us. But that scene was pretty cool. And then it was also cool seeing Ellie go down and do some scavenging, and then she finds, I believe, our first look at a stalker. So, in the game, you don't encounter stalkers that early, but it was pretty cool to see the stalker infected, and so she studies it, cuts into it a little bit, and then stabs and kills it, and then regroups up with Joel, and is constantly asking him for a gun, which is similar to in the game. But then, as she asks about Bill and Frank, Joel says that Bill is not nice, but Frank is. Then we cut back to... Well, no, before we cut, as they're en route, Ellie comes across a bunch of dead bodies, skeletons, from people when the military would take people to a quarantine zone, but if there wasn't enough people, they'd just shoot them and kill them, because infected people or dead people can't turn infected. And so then we flash back to the time when the government was rounding up all these people, and we see Bill, who's a survivalist, as he puts it himself, hiding from the government in his own little basement, which... slight spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2. At some point in the game, you kind of get to walk through a town semi-similar, but you find a basement area kind of sort of similar to Bill's setup. So I thought that was kind of cool. But cutting back to the show, we get to see Bill just go out and see how much of a genius he is, gathering supplies and just fortifying this town. And Bill is known for his traps in the game, so it's pretty fun to see Bill be a paranoid just survivalist. And then we cut forward a couple of years, and he catches Frank. And so I was originally just curious on how this episode was going to go, since in the game, all we know about Frank is that he was somebody that Bill was close to, and later find out it was his partner. But he actually despises Frank in the game and left him a suicide note saying that, yeah, I went and tried to go get this battery, and I got, bit, but you know what? It's better than spending another day in hell with you, because I know you're too scared to go to that part of town. And so when we find Frank, he's had a couple of bite marks and has hung himself, so that way he doesn't turn. Now, a thing I'm a little bit sad about in the show, a comment that we learned about Frank, is when we find Frank, Joel's like, who the hell's that? And then Bill says it's Frank. He's the only idiot who would wear a shirt like that, and it's like some tropical red Hawaiian shirt, if I remember correctly. But we don't see Frank with any like crazy sense of style in the show. He's for the most part, a very well dressed man. So yeah, I'm a little bit sad that characterization of Frank didn't make it into the show. But we see, Bill being all paranoid about Frank, and then Frank talking himself into letting Bill cook him a dinner, and then Bill complies and brings him inside the town, makes him a nice dinner, and then Frank goes to the piano, and I had also been eyeing that piano because it's one of the instruments I enjoy playing a little bit in my free time. So I'm always a sucker whenever a piano is shown, and then also when it gets to be played. So he plays a song for Bill, and then Bill says no, and then Frank has Bill play him a song, and then it's revealed that Bill and Frank are gay, and so then they kiss and they become a couple, and then we get to see their relationship kind of build throughout the years, and to where I thought we might be following the game, because it cuts to like 3 years later, and Frank is yelling at Bill and saying how he wants friends, he wants to fix up the town, he wants to be able to cut the grass, and then Frank convinces Bill, and Bill complies. Then we cut forward a couple more years later, and he's arguing with Bill again. Bill and Frank are arguing, but Frank wants to have friends, and so he's actually been on the radio with Tess. So then Tess and Joel meet up with Bill and Frank, and Tess and Frank are hitting off. Joel's like, hey, I understand. I'm paranoid too. I'm on guard. So Frank and Tess run off to talk. Joel and Bill talk, and then Joel says, well, you know what? We could actually make good business partners, because in the quarantine zone, we got stuff that you don't have access to. Machine parts. I can get you better wiring for the fences that you have going on, and then warns him about raiders who could come by. So then we cut forward a little bit more after spending more time with Bill and Frank. We find out that Frank traded one of their guns to Joel and Tess for some strawberry seeds. They have strawberry seeds, and then I believe it cuts to raiders actually invading the camp. And we get a big action scene of all of Bill's traps going off. That's really cool, and people just being lit on fire, and Bill's out there shooting at them, and then he gets hit by a bullet, and Frank takes him inside and takes care of him. So real iconic of seeing Bill's traps, which is a little bit sad to me. Well, something that's a little bit sad to me is we don't get to see Joel and Ellie deal with any of Bill's traps, because that was a fun part of the game, was the first time that you see a trap blow up and infect it, excuse me, Ellie's like, "Whoa, what was that?" And then Joel's just like, "One of Bill's traps." And then I guess we also don't get the iconic scene of Joel stripping one of Bill's traps and being hung upside down, and Ellie having to cut him down while he's fighting off the infected, and then coming to rescue. And then Bill has to come and rescue Joel and Ellie. So I'm a little bit sad that we didn't get that scene. I'll come back to that more later. I'll get back to kind of the plot summary. So Bill's injured. He's got shot by one of the raiders, but luckily his traps finish all of them off. And then Frank takes care of Bill and gets him all stitched up and taken care of. And then we cut to present day, and I don't know if Frank has ALS or what exact disease he has, but now he's confined to a wheelchair and Bill's taking care of him. Then Frank decides that he doesn't want to live like this anymore and wants Bill to give him a one last good day, because he does kind of give a funny little speech where he was like, "I'm not going to give you the speech that every day was a gift from God." He said, "I had a lot of bad days, and I had a lot of bad days with you too, but I've had more good days with you than anybody else, so could you give me one more good day?" And then he plans out where he wants Bill to take him to get new clothes, and then they have themselves their own little wedding. And then he wants Bill to take these pills, crush them up, and put them in the wine so that way he can die. Bill doesn't want to do it, but then he does end up doing it. And so then you get a little montage of them going through the day that Frank wants to have. And then the big twist, Bill also poisons his own wine, and they go to bed and they die together. So I feel like that's a big stray from the game. And in part 2 of The Last of Us, I don't think we ever knew if Bill was alive or dead, but he's not coming back for season 2, because that was another thing that got announced. The show's confirmed for season 2, so we'll be interested to see what they change about that from the game and how faithfully they decide to follow that. I won't get into that right now, but I'll be willing to give it a shot. So then we cut back to Joel and Ellie. They make it. Joel's looking for Bill and Frank. Ellie finds the note that Bill left for Joel. She reads it. Bill talks about how he never really liked Joel, but they were almost friends, and left him truck keys and all the supplies that he could possibly need or want. Tells him to take care of Tess, but as we know, Tess is dead. So that hits a little bit hard. So then we get a line that happens earlier in the game that now we get in the show, where Joel tells Ellie, "Hey, you don't bring up Tess ever, and don't tell anybody about your arm or your bite, because your condition, because they'll just shoot you on the spot, and then what I say goes," pretty much, and asks her to repeat it, and then she says, "What you say goes." So we got that line. But yeah, so Bill and Frank are dead. I'm a little bit disappointed in that, because some of my favorite scenes were between Joel and Bill and Ellie in the game, and we didn't get those. So I think that's even more of a reason for those who are watching the show to go play the game themselves, to watch someone play the game, because you are getting, at the core, it's the same story, but they are different, and I think you should experience both. It's sort of like, you ask the question of which, and you say both. You can relate it to somebody asking, do you want to keep your hands or do you want to keep your legs? Or do you want to keep your arms or your legs? And you're like, both. But in my own personal opinion, I think the game is the one that you should go for, but that's bias. The game's complete, the show's not complete, and I just know how much of an impact the game had on me, so I do have my biases towards that, but I definitely would say that the show is perfectly reasonable to watch. But I think if you get the chance, play the game, and if you have played the game, I think you definitely should watch the show. There's something that you can enjoy into it, as long as you go into it, as I've said many times, not being a one-to-one remake or scene for scene. There's those nods to us who are fans, and they're fun to look out for. But I'm very disappointed that we don't get to see Bill save Joel and Ellie, and then handcuff Ellie break off, and damn near break his shooting arm. Gosh, I butchered those words, but yeah, not getting to see that scene. Ellie being a little smartass towards Bill. We don't get to see that, so I'm a little bit disappointed in that. But I think what they are doing with the show, they're doing it well, and it's an entirely different mood and things. So, and then we don't get quite the same iconic scene of Ellie and Joel driving in a truck from the game, where Ellie pulls out a dirty magazine that Bill had and kind of makes Joel a little bit uncomfortable, and then pulls out a cassette tape and plays some old country music. So they changed the song for the show. It's actually the song that Bill plays on the piano, but the actual version. So yeah, that's how the show wraps up. So I'm excited for next week to see how well they adapt the game in this aspect, and if the hotel scene will come up again, or if they won't be going through a hotel. They probably won't, because I know that's what they did last week, and I was just all confused. But there's so much that could happen next week, and I'm very excited to see what it entails. I also want to give you guys a huge thank you. I'm getting way more views on these videos than I expect or even think I deserve, but you guys are watching, and then you even commented. I really appreciate the comments, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts more, and even if some of you return. I know there wasn't a whole lot of action this episode, and somebody thought the last episode was kind of a walk-in simulator, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts again, man. And somebody else subscribed and said that they're looking forward to my review next week. So hey, here it is. I hope you enjoy. I hope you comment again. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And to wrap things up, I'm a busy math major right now in college, finishing my final semester, and then I've got these early morning classes that I got to get to on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so that's why I rush and I don't edit these. But once the series concludes in May, I actually do want to do a proper full edited episode after I give my unedited review of the series finale, but to do a legitimate sit down edited video of my thoughts as a series as a whole. And I'd love to include some of your guys' comments if you would like that. So anybody who's made it this far in the video, I'm I know my video doesn't have that long of a retention rate looking at the analytics, but for those who do make it to the end of this video, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think about being a part of my full edited review of the series once it concludes in March. All right, see you guys next week.